I'm Tiese. I work as a consultant for Group 9, and for the past 15 years I've actually been focusing on process orchestration and automation for clients. I think the most prominent thing that comes to mind is extracting the logic. So there's all kinds of logic we put into systems. We try to somehow mold this thing to do exactly as we to get the behavior we want. And one part of that is process, and the other is decision logic. And extracting that from the system that is being, well, it's actually implementing the, let's say, the business logic is the most important function to me. And not just for the exercise of being able to extract it and not having to deal with it in that system itself, but also so we can then change it later. So if we want to actually optimize the process, or we need to change things around, we can do it at that point where we've defined how things actually are organized. We're still dealing with monolithic applications, and there's nothing wrong with having a monolithic application that's dedicated to doing some task really well. But I think what we try to do in those cases is we try to bake all of the logic into that system, and then we discovered, oh, but wait a minute, this process that it's executing is not actually responsible for this entire process. There are things that for which the responsibility lies elsewhere, and we need to now interface with those, but they don't expect maybe that we work in this specific way. So now it becomes really complicated to build something into a particular application that's not solely responsible for coordinating that work. And it resulted in, I'd say, brittle interfaces, a lot of customizations, just hardwired coding of how the process should work. And then if anything changed or anything went wrong, this is where, when you use a process engine, you get all of those, the ways to deal with those kinds of situations, you get them in the package. Now I can deal with exceptions, now I can escalate things, now I can wait for certain things to happen. All of these patterns that you will typically need, maybe not at the first iteration, but then on the second and the third you realize, oh yeah, but we actually do have to deal with that because the real world is just messier than we thought when we started. It seemed so simple when we got started. And having a tool that provides all of those things and enables you to focus on what you actually want to do, that's been the real shift in using these tools, I think. And I think, first of all, to get the outcome, you need to know what you're actually aiming for. And because these tools use model-based way of defining the process, this enables you to talk with people who understand what needs to happen. And this doesn't happen as by magic. I know from experience. We have to help people understand that we want to work in this way, and we have to explain how we can deal with certain situations. But having something to shoot at is just, it's invaluable, really. That's one of the features that sets off Camunda, for instance, from maybe other products that approach the same problem in a different way, having a model-driven approach and also using a standardized modeling language. Most of it comes down to, okay, let's talk about what you're trying to achieve with this process. That's always been a point that I try to focus on, because I find that it simplifies the discussion that we need to have. Because if we're just completely clear on what we're talking about, what the process is for, then it's much easier to figure out, okay, but in this specific situation, is this still part of the process? Is this maybe in a different process that comes after? Or when we trigger this process, does this need to happen or not? So you get into the details, but by having the larger context before you do, I find that's enormously helpful. And then being able to take that model once you all agree on what we're going to do, and then execute it, that exact model in the software. I mean, you don't get that in any other way that I know of. Processes are the only way we have that we know we can deliver value in a structured way. And you may not like the word, you may have had bad experiences in the past, but it's true. Processes execute strategy for me. That's the basic. And as long as we agree on that, then we can start talking about how do we do processes then. And my take is, it should not be a tremendous effort to figure out what are the processes that matter most to us and identify at least one of them where we can gain some value by defining what the process is for, how it works, and taking that straight into the way we operate it. And that's where process engines come in, to take that vision that we have straight into reality. And that stems from the fact that Camunda has always had this open approach to not trying to do everything that you might want to do with software, not encroaching on other areas where we have perfectly suitable tools already, but creating a system that is open to extension and open to use in different contexts and let you use whatever you need besides that, in addition to that. So really focusing on the core competence of executing processes and decisions. So just orchestrating AI, as any other task really, was something that felt natural already. But with agentic, I have to say, just by hearing some examples, it's got me thinking on some of the use cases that I have to deal with day to day. I say, oh, maybe in some environments, a lot of the processes are still very deterministic. We want to set them up in a certain way. We want to be in control of how things operate, and that's perfectly fine, and it's really the only option. But then there are cases, even in the same environments, where you could identify, we could get rid of a lot of laborious tasks and do a lot of upfront work, for instance, to get a specialist to look at something in a lot less time by applying, for instance, an agentic approach. So I think by hearing examples of others and then applying it to the context that I know, I've now begun to see that there are more applications than I thought of before.